This is a case study on second language acquisition. The case study was done with a second grade student coming in from Egypt only 3 months ago. It is important to get to know as much as you can about your case study student or any student that you are going to work explicitly with to teach English as a second language to. When creating interview questions, you need to make sure that interview questions are relevant to that particular student. This will give you the ability to compile as much background information on the student that you can in order to create adequate lesson plans for that student. The second part of the case study was an error analysis. Teachers need to analyze students' writing as they determine the next phase of their learning. There is always this misconception that all students are the same as long as they come from the same background. That is absolutely not true. It is important to pay close attention to each student so that their individual needs are addressed. It is also important to become familiar with which errors will resolve themselves and which errors will require explicit instruction and what type of instructions, including one-on-one, small group, or whole group instruction to meet the needs of that individual student. An oral language proficiency assessment was given to the student. In this particular case study, this student scored in the early production stage of oral proficiency. Her comprehension scored at a 3, which means she understands most of what is said, but you must take into account that you need to speak it at a slower pace. When it comes to fluency, she can speak some words and she can speak some complete sentences, but she does it with some hesitation, and there are some moments of silence because her language is still limited. Regarding vocabulary, she misuses words. Again, this is due to her limited vocabulary in the English language. Pronunciation is not always appropriate for the level of second graders. Her grammar falls at a 4, where she occasionally makes grammatical mistakes. It is common for children that speak native Arabic to make these types of mistakes, especially when we're talking about word order and where the verb should be located, whether it's in speaking, whether it's in reading, or whether it's in writing. It is interesting with the student, she is able to ask in complete sentences interesting things such as, may I use the bathroom? May I get a piece of paper? She speaks them in fluent English, almost as if she was taught to use English in a survival mode. She could do this from almost the very first day she entered. She had no concept, although, of any written language in English at all. For this case study, I created a lesson for reading comprehension. I decided to use an idea that I found in our Making Sense book that we used during the course of this class. The lesson contained what they called a questioning web. It taught students how to generate and answer questions to check for understanding. I found this to be a very valuable tool that can be used not only with this student, but with small groups of students or even as a whole group exercise in order to make sure that students are truly understanding what they are reading. Reading comprehension is one of the biggest struggles that I find, not only with ELLs, but in general with all students. Many of them can read at a higher level, but when you go in to check on the comprehension levels, they are lower than what they actually can read at or what pace they can read at. This lesson proved to be quite adequate for this student. I have also decided to use this lesson with the rest of the class as a comprehension mini group lesson, and having students grouped at the level of at their particular level, whether it's leveled by reading or leveled by English language proficiency. I cannot reiterate enough that there are no students in the classroom that are exactly the same, just as there are no two ELL students that are the same either. We need to take into account each student's individual needs and what they need in order to be successful in the classroom and outside of the classroom. It will take a great deal of professional development, whether it's through courses like this one or school professional development, and also collaboration with other teachers, such as title support, ELL support, that is provided by the school district. The use of the SIOP model is a good teaching practice, not only for ELLs, but for all students. If I had to take one thing away from this course, it's the things that we learned on how to create an adequate and appropriate SIOP lesson so that our students are gaining the most out of what we are teaching.